Hello and welcome everyone. And we can see you logging in. Thank you for writing your name or where you're calling from. This is always exciting to see so many people from the US and abroad. We're back and excited to talk about this topic, which is diabetes today. And just as a reminder, everybody should have gotten the chapter from Dr. McDougall's book, where you can read about diabetes. And I think that today his wife, Mary, is joining us. Dr. McDougall is in Santa Rosa, California. I'm Gustavo Tolosa here in Dallas, Texas. Dr. McDougall is an MD, an internist doctor who is still treating patients. He's been practicing medicine for over 40 years, and he has tremendous amounts of information to share with us today. And we're ready to hear you, Dr. McDougall. How are you doing today?
I'm ready to go. I've had.
You're ready to go. Yes.
Oh, I tell you, I've been so busy, and we just ran a program with 115 people in it from a company, and you and I are going to be working together to run more company programs. It's been busy. I did not get my Babe Ruth bar on Halloween.
You did not?
No, I haven't seen the grandkids yet. Remember, I eat one Babe Ruth bar. The kids go out and collect it. Grandkids, well, that's a whole nother story. But yeah, the book you were supposed to read was this one right here.
That's right.
Chapters. We're going to talk about different things like arthritis and diabetes in here and so on. And that was me when I wrote the book. All right. You were also supposed to read this newsletter, which is what I send you whenever you say, how do I treat my type 2 diabetes? It's a newsletter. It's free on the website. No gimmicks. It's the December 2009 newsletter. And we'll talk about that. But first, I want to get into something else, and that is the newsletter I wrote last month. If you didn't read it.
Yeah, it's right here.
Yeah.
Very good newsletter. Very good.
I put a lot of work into it. I always do on my newsletters. Some people wonder why I do this, and if I'm afraid when I write things like that. In fact, somebody else, I guess I can get away with this. Somebody said, Roby said that I had balls the size of Jupiter, and I wrote back and I said, no, they're the size of Mercury. And I had a few other comments. I just don't know. I mean, I just don't have that kind of interaction with people. I seem to get along with everybody. The dairy industry is not going to write me about this article. I enjoy writing it. I like to tell you what I know and what I believe, and I still remember a lot of things. Anyway, this newsletter article that came out 2 days ago is called, maybe 2 days ago. It's the October newsletter. It's called Chocolate Milk Disease in Disguise, because what the dairy industry calls it is they call it chocolate milk nutrition in disguise, which is, one of their big fat lies. In fact, you can watch their ad just by clicking there, and you can tell they got a dietitian telling children it's good for them to drink milk, and it's smart and good nutrition, and it's just all terrible. I told a story about how when I was a little kid, like 5, 6, 7 years old, we had a morning break, and they made us drink a carton of something. Either unsalted tomato juice was unpalatable. It was so disgusting. Or I could have white milk for 2 cents or chocolate milk for 3 cents, and I came from a very low-income family. And so that 1 penny made a big difference to me, but I still had to buy the chocolate because I couldn't get the white down. And I tell about how my grandson, who's almost 13, when he was in kindergarten in Calistoga, California, to get out of the milk was free at break, but to get out of the milk program, his parents had to pay $2 a day for juice. And that still goes on in your school. That's how the dairy industry own the schools, is they give you milk for free, and they have all kinds of plans that are integrated between the United States Department of Agriculture and your school system. Kids just don't stand a chance. I have a copy in that newsletter of what the nutritional label is for chocolate milk. It's equivalent to Coca-Cola, regular Coca-Cola, not Diet Coca-Cola. It's equivalent to Coca-Cola and worse. And same amount of sugar, it's just in cow's milk. Half the sugar comes from the cow. And to make chocolate milk, they add another equal amount of sugar so that you can get it down. I talk in here in the newsletter about how the basic problem is we're drinking cow's milk and we're human beings, just like you wouldn't drink rat milk or whale milk or kangaroo milk. That's the wrong species. Those milks are species specific. for that particular offspring. And when you feed cow's milk to infants, you cause overnutrition. If you fed infant mother's milk to a cow, they become underdeficient. You'd be arrested for farm animal abuse and put in jail. But you can feed a human baby cow's milk, and people think it's good nutrition. Anyway, I talked to you about that. I talked to you about how experts agree you can go look at. There's no such thing as calcium deficiency that ever occurs in anybody on any natural diet. It's just all unique positioning to sell dairy. And then I told you in here about how cow's milk is dirty. It's the filth. It's just filthy with chemicals, all kinds of environmental chemicals. And then I told you about how it was also filthy with bovine leukemia viruses and all kinds of things. You can look this up. I mean, at the dairy industry, it's not like they can keep it from getting out. It's just nobody cares. They have so much money that they can bury anything they want. You say all the milk is infected with leukemia viruses, and chimpanzees fed infected leukemia laden milk get leukemia. They don't care as long as you don't look for it and nobody tells them about it. They just keep on selling milk. So it's a dirty industry of real people doing just regular jobs. It's not a conspiracy, but they're killing your kids. Mary, hey, Mary's here. Come on in, Mary, because you got a section of the newsletter too. Do you want to use half of my headset, or are you just going to wing it?
I'm just going to sit right here.
All right.
Good.
So,
we're welcoming Mary then.
There she is.
Hi.
My favorite friend.
Oh,
for
there you go.
45 years.
Hi, Mary. Everybody's excited to see you.
They're over there.
No, I didn't print out the recipe.
Oh, you didn't.
Oh,
Tell them what you put in this month?
Well, I put in a recipe from a restaurant that's in Napa Valley, but it's also all around the world. And you can find the recipe online, but it's different than the recipe that I put in. Mine is a little bit more pure.
Yeah, it's really, really good. And what do you call the recipe?
The boyfriend burger.
And you'll know why you call it what. What's a good thing to try, and then you put a hot and sour soup.
I put in a hot and sour soup because I got a request from someone who loved my hot and sour soup recipe, and it was from a newsletter that we published in 1998, I think, and those aren't online. And he couldn't find it anywhere, and so I had John.
I found it.
Help me find it.
I was rewarded adequately, so don't you worry, but I did find it.
And so that recipe is in there also. for someone who asks for it. So if you ever can't find a recipe because it's in an old newsletter or something else, just write and I'll have John try and find it for you.
Brilliant. I will be very favored afterwards. So don't you hesitate.
You'll be glad to find.
Don't you hesitate to have Mary ask me something. And you also, holidays are coming up?
The holidays are coming up. And so I also included my special holiday recipe section because, like John said, we just ran a really large program. And one of the questions that one of the participants had was, what am I going to serve for Thanksgiving and Christmas when all my friends come over? And I said, well, I just happen to have a whole list of recipes that I always serve to my family. And I did change one recipe, though. I changed it to my favorite really creamy gravy recipe that I make with rice milk.
We're having that tonight for dinner.
We're having that tonight for dinner.
Folks, I tell you, this is a killer. She's going to make mashed potatoes tonight in your Instant Pot without peeling them.
Without peeling them, I just put them in there with 2 cups of water and turn them on for 20 minutes, and they're done. And then I just pour out a little bit of the water, and I take my little handy masher and I mash them, and then I make the gravy.
Oh, and some corn.
And some corn broccoli. No, I have broccolini tonight.
So we're having broccolini tonight. But I'll tell you, I could eat that. You know, I tell you about my favorite bean and potato dishes. But I with that gravy, I could put that gravy on cardboard and eat it. It's really, really amazing.
So anyway, that recipe I switched out for one of the other recipes that was a little bit more time consuming because you had to sit there and stir it all the time. And this one is made with rice flour and it doesn't clump like wheat flour does. And then all the shopping lists are there and all the ingredients that you need. So for people that have been using this for a long time, yes, it's a repeat, but there are a lot of new people out there.
And it's updated. And it's in the newsletter this month, the October 2016 newsletter, getting you ready for our November holiday of Thanksgiving, and then for those who celebrate Christmas or any other holiday. This is shows you how to put the whole holiday meal together, sin turkey. Anyway, you'll find that very helpful.
The stuffed pumpkin,
yes,
is my centerpiece.
Yeah.
Dr. McDougall, can you ask Mary a question?
I want to talk to people about is the Kauai trip.
No, we have a question first.
Oh, we have a question? Okay.
What's the question?
Yes, someone is asking, why can't the old newsletters be scanned online?
I can do a lot of things.
Okay.
But right now I'm only working 14 hours a day. But they can be, should be, and it's not a problem. And actually, I know a company that can do that because it's the same company that scanned the Pritikin review of the scientific literature, which is a 500-page document, which is also linked in that newsletter. And if you are a clinician, if you are a dietitian, if you are a curious person, and you want to see what the truth is, and that is the research published before industry bought the journals and the researchers. Nathan Pritikin did this whole 500-page review. It's not for the lighthearted. Believe me, there's a lot of facts in there. But anybody who's serious about knowing the truth, not the crap from the dairy industry, not the meat industry's lies, not the fish industries that, if you want to know what the truth is, then you read Nathan Pritikin's document, which I, at great effort and some expense, put up there for you for free. So yes, I could do all the newsletters. I could do them all. I may just do that. I have a company that'll do them, and then we can scan them and put them up. And if you want them,
we probably
all right. What's happening with Kauai?
Oh, Kauai! I have 8 oceanfront rooms left for our last Kauai trip, and that's it.
Can't get any more.
I can't get any more.
You can't get any garden rooms.
I can't get any more garden rooms. I have 8 oceanfront rooms left, and that's all. So if you're interested at all in getting away from the snow at the end of January.
All that money you got stuck under the mattress, or the money you were saving for when you get old, spend it now. There's no sense in saving it. That's my philosophy, because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know whether we're going to run another Kauai trip.
I doubt it.
You doubt it. You don't know whether we're going to run any more adventure trips.
I don't know whether I'm going to run any more adventure trips at all.
We're 70 years old, so we have had thoughts about changing the business. But for sure, we're going to Kauai. at the best food we've ever had in 30 adventure trips
fantastic,
ever. That's why we're going back to the Sheraton Kauai, and there's a beach right next door.
We don't usually go back
The same
to the
place.
same place. We did in Costa Rica,
yeah.
but because there wasn't anything else.
Well, they deserve our business.
They
last time I think we had 80 people. We got a lot more than that now. But we had kids going along. Heather's children are going along. Possibly my brother's children are going. There are other children going along, but it's not a children-dominated trip. There are lots and lots and lots of single people.
Lots of single people this time.
And families and people who have traveled with us for 30 years. So it's a friendly trip. I give one lecture. Otherwise, Mary and I just kind of hang around and read and talk and play with you and the kids. So it leaves January
28th to February 4th.
And she's got 8 rooms.
I have 8 rooms
and
left.
She cannot get any more rooms. It's not like she's been bargaining with me for the last 6 months. Well, maybe I could get because you've sold out like 3 times. Maybe I could get a few more rooms.
Yeah, but this time they told me I'm done.
She's done.
I'm done.
So anyway, if you would like to come with us on the trip.
So if you would like to join us, and we would love to be with you, don't hesitate, because when those 8 rooms are gone, that's it.
And I'll give you a little hint. Don't say, well, we'll join them next year. That's not a good way to think, okay? This is a good trip to go on. Mary and I are looking forward at our best to meet a lot of our family. And the beach right next door is unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
So this will be.
You can walk for miles down the front of the beach there.
Okay. Well, anyway, this is one of your last invitations. I'll tell you, you'll probably be sold out by the end of next week.
I hope so.
Well, then how about all these people that want to come that haven't taken the trouble to sign up? You could be sold out by the end of the day.
I could be. We did that for Alaska once.
We sold out in 24 hours.
We did. Yeah.
Anyways, it's a well worth our trip, and we'd love to have you come. But you go to the website, go to the 800 number, and don't sit there and say, well, I'll go next time, or it's too expensive. What are you going to do with money? No. We pretty much spend everything we make, don't we?
Yeah, but there are a lot of people who aren't like that.
They're like us.
Not like us.
Well, maybe they'll take care of us when we're old and retired because we don't have any money left. All right.
All right.
Let me go and talk about that.
Get back to your.
Thank you, Mary.
What you were going to talk about.
Yeah, go work on your Kauai.
Okay. All right. Bye, everybody.
Okay. Bye-bye, Mary.
Okay, so Gustavo, you want me to go into diabetes a little bit, or you want to?
Sure. Please, if you just mention a few.
All right.
Facts.
Good. I would like to do that. I kind of forgot. I read all this stuff, the book and the article. I read it all and studied it carefully for you last week. And unfortunately, we had technical problems that were beyond Gustavo's and my control. But thank goodness Gustavo put the effort into it to get us back alive and well this week. And next week, I guess Doug Lyle's going to be on, and I'll be on after that. But what we're going to do is talk about diabetes. So let's talk about it a little bit. Diabetes is the definition is just basically elevated blood sugar, which can come from a couple of different means, but the means that we're talking about has to do with the insulin produced in the pancreas. There are 2 ends of the spectrum. There's type 1 diabetes, where the entire pancreas has been destroyed. The beta cells that produce insulin have been destroyed. How are they destroyed? They're destroyed through an autoimmune reaction where the body makes antibodies to foreign proteins. In this case, the research says that when you consume a cow, in the form of cow's milk primarily, the beta-casein goes into the bloodstream. The body recognizes this. The immune system recognizes the beta-casein of the cow's milk as something foreign. Cow's running around in my blood. So it makes antibodies to this foreign protein, beta-casein. Actually, we know the 17 amino acids that these antibodies are made to, which are on the beta-casein protein, which are also the same 17 amino acids in the same structural form and sequence, are on the insulin-producing cells of the pancreas. So this foreign cow, because you feed yourself, by the way, it's not just children. Half people over age who get type 1 diabetes are adults. So if you feed yourself cow's milk, it goes through your gut into your bloodstream. The body, as it should, makes antibodies to the cow's milk. But in the process of looking for that beta-casein, it finds the beta cells in the pancreas and destroys them. It takes on average 3 to 5 years to destroy an entire pancreas. And then you have type 1 diabetes, and then you're insulin dependent the rest of your life. You want to ruin a family? You want to ruin a family? You give them a case of type 1 diabetes, and the whole family structure has changed. And by the way, this was published by the American Academy of Pediatrics in 1994. This causal relationship still exists, hasn't changed. It's just, as I say, the dairy industry has all the money. They can twist and lie, but you can go to the internet, to Google, or to the National Library of Medicine. You can put in type 1 diabetes and dairy or cow's milk and just have a ball. You'll find probably 200 articles to tell you what I tell you. All right, so that's how the pancreas is usually destroyed. I was taught it was destroyed by the same kind of reaction. It's called molecular mimicry with a virus, like a measles virus. But the virus, folks, is cow milk protein in most cases. All right, so that's type 1. You destroyed the whole pancreas. Now, at the other extreme is type 2. Now, type 2, the pancreas works just great. It's making loads of insulin. In fact, often twice as much as somebody without diabetes. It's working overtime. The reason it's working overtime is because it's trying to overcome insulin resistance. Insulin resistance always develops because you're too fat. You got too much fat in your body fat tissues. You got too much fat in your liver. You got too much fat every place. And the body says, hey, you're getting too fat. You know what's going to happen to you? You're going to get so fat that when the saber-toothed tiger comes chasing you, he's going to eat you because you can't run away, or you can't get into the cave, into the hole, because you're just too fat. So it's not a survival advantage to be too fat. Oh, no, you can gain 30, 40, 50 pounds in preparation for winter, but you can't gain 60 pounds because that's too fat. So the body develops insulin resistance. So the insulin doesn't work well at the cellular level. As a result, fat is forced into fat cells by insulin. That's its job. So when you make insulin resistance, then less fat can go into the fat cells. Okay, that's good. Now you stop gaining weight, but you make less insulin and your regular cells are resistant too, and so your blood sugar goes up. And that's the sign you focus on, is this elevated blood sugar. That's not the problem. The problem is your body has normally, naturally, as it should, developed resistance to insulin, so you don't become 500 pounds overweight. And by the way, I have seen people 500 pounds overweight. I've seen newscasts where they had to come in with a hand truck, not a hand truck, one of those lifters, and had to pick somebody out of their bed with a forklift and take them to the hospital because they were 1,400 pounds. Well, that's in that case, you don't develop insulin resistance, so your body just keeps stuffing fat into fat cells. And you also don't have diabetes. You're just weigh a half a ton. All right, but let's forget about that rare individual. I've seen him 5 or 6, 10 times, that one that weighs over 500 pounds overweight. Let's talk about the typical type 2 diabetes. It is caused by being too fat. So how can you fix it? Well, anybody that loses weight. And the current way to treat type 2 diabetes by popularity is to rearrange your stomach through bariatric surgery. There's an 80% cure rate by bariatric surgery, and it's reported in the journals. Everybody goes, and they really are. The doctors out there going, oh, now he doesn't know how to solve the problem. We're just do a stomach band, or a sleeve, or some intestinal bypass, and we'll cure type 2 diabetes. And then, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not joking. That's a new multi-billion-dollar-a-year business to treat a disease caused by overnutrition. Well, let me give you some other thoughts on how you can do this. The key is weight loss. So any way that causes weight loss will cure type 2 diabetes. Dentists used to cure type 2 diabetes by wiring your teeth together. Yes, they did. Oncologists can cure type 2 diabetes by giving you cancer chemotherapy, so you lose your appetite and you lose weight, and they cure type 2 diabetes with chemotherapy. Brain surgeons, they could do it with prefrontal lobotomies. They just put a probe in here and kind of scrape off some of your brain tissue so you lose your appetite, and they have just cured type 2 diabetes. Right. Amazing profession I have. And one last way you can do it, my general surgeon buddies, general surgeons, if they do bilateral lower extremity amputations, then you can't get to the refrigerator, and we've just cured type 2 diabetes. All right, let's get off that joke. So you got type 1, total absence of production of insulin. You've got type 2 overproduction of insulin. There's something in between. It's called type 1.5. And I see lots of these people who say they're type 2, but they're thin and their blood sugars are still up. So they're not type 2. They have partial pancreatic insufficiency. They're type 1.5. They make enough insulin to stay out of the hospital, but not to make enough insulin to keep the blood sugars normal. And you notice that when people are relatively thin and still have elevated blood sugars. So do understand that difference. It's extremely important. There's total insulin insufficiency, complete sufficiency, and there's something in between that a lot of people have. Some of the pancreas has been destroyed. They have type 1.5. So let me tell you how I treat type 1.5, because type 2 is entirely curable by weight loss. And type 1 always requires insulin. I usually give them a long-acting insulin. I stay way away from these insulin pumps and all this technology. It ruins people's lives, but we don't have to go into that. I use a little insulin. A body requires about 40 insulins a day. 40 units of insulin a day is what a human body requires. So somewhere or another, you get them around 40 units. But I know some people are chasing blood sugars so that they're taking 80 or 120, and they've got all these pumps, and you're ruining your life. You're ruining your whole life. So now we've got type 1 needs insulin. Type 2 never needs insulin, always cured. Type 1.5. How do I treat type 1.5 diabetics? Well, I don't put them on any pills because the pills are so deathly toxic. I will not prescribe any diabetic pills, including metformin. And we'll talk about that later. Maybe, let's say, I think it's September of 2017. I have an expert on metformin coming. I don't use it. My son does, maybe less often as he used to. Dr. Lim does, or did, until he started rethinking metformin. He knew all the other ones were deadly dangerous. They'd kill you from heart disease. Everybody knows that. You know, all the other drugs on the market do far more harm than good, but they still argue about metformin. And I'll tell you, metformin does more harm than good. It's the least toxic of the very toxic drugs. So I never prescribe pills. What I do in a type 1.5 diabetic is I do treat them for three issues. One is if they lose too much weight. You know, if I was a type 1.5 diabetic, I'm 150 pounds now. If I weighed 110 pounds, you know, that would not be good. And the way to keep the weight on is I'd have to add some insulin. So I add a little long-acting insulin called Lantus. So for too much weight loss, I add some insulin, usually one dose in the evening, enough to stop the weight loss. If a diabetic develops symptoms of diabetes, such as excess urination, which is troublesome, a little Lantus will take care of that too. And the third reason is, and I have to tell you, Gustavo, and everybody listening, is I'm a real doctor. I take care of all kinds of problems, including mental problems, emotional problems. See, when your mother-in-law gets worried, or your husband gets worried, or your doctor gets worried, they're worried about the numbers, or you get worried, hey, I can make the numbers look better by giving you a little insulin. I seriously do, because people are so traumatized by high numbers, and they're so worried because they're not taking the medicine, because they've been so educated by the drug companies and their doctors, which only have one trick in their doctor bag, and that's to give them drugs, that they're scared. And so what I'll do sometimes is I'll give somebody a little Lantus. Now, how much Lantus do I use to stop the weight loss, to stop the excessive urination, to stop people from worrying? Well, it could be 10 units, could be 20. Certainly no more than 40, because as I told you, the body only makes 40 units of insulin, and that should be enough. Anyway, I provided you in a lot of things that are true and basic in the book, McDougall's Medicine, A Challenging Second Opinion. This article from 2009, September, is the exact way I treat type 2 diabetes. It tells you how aggressive treatment kills, and it does. The studies show, the core, the advanced, and the veteran studies show that people who are aggressively treated to make their hemoglobin A1C look normal, say 6%, have a greatly increased risk of dying of heart disease, suffering hypoglycemia, gaining weight. It's all there. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows this. There's not a doctor or a scientist out there that doesn't know this. Yet you will be treated aggressively. You'll be treated to make your hemoglobin A1C close to 6%. Now, there are exceptions now. There are doctors who are waking up and realize that this is very dangerous. So when I generalize, I still say the vast majority of doctors are doing the wrong thing, but some are waking up. And then they're saying, where should we make the hemoglobin A1C? What level should we choose? Well, a Kaiser, I believe, chooses 7%. My question is why? They have no reason. Well, why don't you choose 8%? Well, maybe that'd be okay. But why? They have no reason to do that. They have no reason to choose a particular hemoglobin A1C level as a goal. They do not. So it could be 10% that's best. All I can tell you is when you're treating yourself with insulin, because I don't use pills, don't get hypoglycemia. Aim for a blood sugar of about 150 milligram percent, which is in international units, you divide by 18. Aim for that blood sugar in the morning. I encourage you not to check your sugar throughout the day. It'll drive you nuts. Even if you're type 1, it'll drive you nuts. What are you going to do unless you're that kind of micromanagement person? You do yourself harm psychologically and physically. Check it once a day, have it above 150 milligram per deciliter. How high? Well, let's just pick a number. You ask me why, I don't know. Say as high as 350 milligrams per deciliter in the morning. Remember, divide by 18 to get international units. I think that's good treatment as far as drug therapy, but the absolutely fundamental, most important treatment is you must eat well if you're type 2 or type 1. The only people with type 2 diabetes I have seen live 40 years and more without any complications, no eye damage, no kidney damage, perfectly good health, except for they require supplemental insulin, are people who have been raised on a diet similar to what I recommend. And I have seen that. Otherwise, your risk of blindness, kidney failure, other complications of diabetes is close to 100% within 11 to 17 years of disease. So you may never grow your pancreas back. So what? That's the way life is. They may never find you an artificial pancreas. So what? That's the way it is. But you cannot feed yourself a diet that kills people without diabetes. That's the American diet. People die of heart disease, of cancer, of etc. They don't have diabetes. They have normal functioning pancreas. You take somebody with diabetes with a non-functional pancreas, and they are metabolically handicapped. So a type 1 diabetic gets an infection in their toe, they could lose their leg in a day or two because they can't defend and repair. They have this metabolic handicap. I get an infection in my toe, I can let it go for 6 months. My immune system would take care of it. So you are just real sensitive people. That's just the way it is. So you cannot feed yourself things that kill people without diabetes, like meat and chicken and fish and cheese and all the animal foods and all the toxic oils. You must eat a starch-based diet strictly. I've taken care of people for 40 years. Even I remember a beauty queen one time. Irrelevant. But maybe in this day and age, politics, it's not. But I mean, I just remember she was like 18 years old, and she would have been blind and dead and sick by now. That was 40 years ago. But she listened. She said, I will eat well, and I give myself a little insulin, and life has been good for her as far as I know, and the other diabetics who've listened to this. So your doctor only has one bag in his bag of tricks, and that's a bunch of pills. Excuse me. He has only one trick in his bag of tricks, and that's a bunch of pills. But you best know that diet is fundamental, and judicious use of medication, as I described, is important. And the diabetes discussion. What do you have to ask me?
Very good, Dr. McDougall. That's just very, very good. I just, so many of the questions that I have here are from people that are measuring their blood sugar, like you were saying, like 3, 4, 5 times a day or more. There you go.
I just want you to know what you're saying. The Starch Solution came out in an audio version.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's what this is.
It's awesome.
Yeah, so you can buy and listen to the car. I don't know how you do these things, but I'm sure you can find it on Amazon. It's the audio.
Sure.
All those who wanted that book, it's an audio now. And of course, the healthiest side on the planet is doing wonderful. I'm ready for questions.
Okay, so what do you say? People that say, well, I eat a potato or I eat lunch and I measure my blood sugar and it's skyrocketing. I mean, when are people supposed to measure their blood sugar? Right before they eat? I assume not.
I don't know why they measure their blood sugar. I mean, you need to check it, I think, once a day if you're type 1 diabetic. Right. And if you're type 2, you never check it. And if you're type 1.5, you just kind of check it once in a while, like maybe a couple times a week or whatever. If you're on medication, you need to check it maybe once a day. So they eat a potato. Well, when you eat a potato, you eat what you're supposed to eat, which is carbohydrate. And what the body does is what it's supposed to do, which is to raise blood sugar. That's what's supposed to happen. Okay, so the blood sugar goes up more than somebody who has sufficient insulin. So what do? You give yourself another shot of insulin, and your sugar goes down. And I see this every day. By the way, this is every patient, not just occasional. Every patient out there who isn't under my care. This is what they do. I had a lady I won't say when it was, but I had a lady who had one of these pumps, or actually she had a reader, and all day long, I have many patients, not just this one lady I'm thinking of. I have many patients who are on these pumps, and they and their husband and their children and their friends and so on spend all day long. What's your blood sugar now? Well, how much insulin is your pump giving her? How much extra short-acting insulin are you going to give her? This goes on all day, and their entire life is ruined. Okay, so your blood sugar went up after you ate a potato. What are you going to do? Give you a shot of insulin? Why? It's going to come down. You know, what have you accomplished? Well, you put yourself at risk for hypoglycemia. You've destroyed part of your day because for at least a half an hour, you're going to worry about whether you should, what dose, what happened with the insulin. You don't do that.
No.
Let's just I guess we're dealing with 1.5 to a type 1 diabetic, because a type 2 we told you is 100% curable. So they take a little Lantus in the evening, maybe check their sugar in the morning, have it between 150 and 350. They go on throughout the day, and their sugar will go up and down, up and down, up and down. You can know about it or not know about it. It doesn't matter. You're not going to feel it. You don't want to have hypoglycemia. That you don't want to do. You'll get in a car accident. You'll get picked up for a DUI. So high sugars are not the problem. Low sugars are the problem. That's why I say head for 150. Well, as time goes on, if you switch the kind of diet I recommend, you'll become type 1, 1.5. You'll become less brittle. That means brittle means when your blood sugar goes up and down, up and down. And by the way, when I was a student, our goal was to make that sugar normal. I treated hundreds of people when I was a resident student, type 2 diabetes or type 1.5. I never, ever, ever made somebody have a normal blood sugar. We would do hourly urines on them and have a sliding scale and all this stuff. And I'll tell you, they were 350, 450, 50, up, down, all over the place. So don't feel guilty if you have diabetes. Don't feel guilty if your doctor trying to take care of diabetes. It does not work. You cannot make a normal sugar, even with an insulin pump, without hurting people. All right, so your sugar goes up. But in time, what happens, Gustavo, in time, important, the sugars become more stable. You have less risk of hypoglycemia on this kind of diet. The insulin functions much more effectively. I have to have diabetic patients drop their dose by a third, their insulin dose by a third when they start, because they'll end up falling in their mashed potatoes from low sugar. But the most important thing is you have to take a little insulin, but you get to keep your eyes and your kidneys and not have a heart attack or a high risk of cancer if you eat good. So your sugar goes up after a potato. It's good.
Right. Well, good. Thank you for clarifying that. I know that question comes up a lot of times. It comes
up not only with patients, but with physicians, and even physicians I work closely with, and if I tried to explain to them why we do things differently. You just absolutely have to avoid hypoglycemia, but this kind of ignorance, wrong message has been so indoctrinated in the general public and in medical students that you must control the blood sugar so carefully. Even when you look at the results, that all the results show you harm the patients. There's no exceptions. Well, there's a tiny exception, but let's just say I gave you it in this paper. Go look at the 6 major studies. Aggressive treatment kills.
That's very important. Yeah.
And it's hard even for doctors I work closely with to get that out of their mindset. They're still, because they were so heavily taught that we must do whatever we can to control that sugar, but they never do, never can, never will. It doesn't work. Everybody feels guilty. They're disappointed, and you got to stop thinking that way.
Right.
That's what I have to say.
Okay. Well, very good. This is very clear. Dr. McDougall, could you explain ketones and what they mean for a diabetic?
Well, what happens when you have ketones in your blood or your urine is you're not metabolizing sugar well because you don't have enough insulin. So the sugar can't go into the cells and do its job like it's supposed to. So that means you need more insulin, either by your pancreas or exogenously through a shot. Now, if you can't get the sugar to go into the cell because insulin opens the gates on the cells to allow the glucose to go inside so it can give you energy. Well, if you don't have enough insulin and the gates are closed, what happens, the body has to burn some fuel. So what it burns is fat. Okay, so it burns fat from the fat you eat and your body fat, and a byproduct of fat combustion is ketones, and it smells like acetone. And it can get so bad you can go into ketoacidosis, which is type 1 diabetic, and you can die. I mean, these people need emergency treatment. And remember, half the cases occur in people over the age of 18, not just in children. And it requires intense, careful treatment. You got to get them out of ketoacidosis. They say they can die from dehydration. But otherwise, if somebody finds a little ketone in the urine, diabetic or not diabetic, it just means you're burning fat. In diabetes, it means you probably need a little more treatment or some careful watching.
Mm-hmm. Are there any, someone is asking here if there are any congenital disease that can affect our insulin level?
There are. Yes, there's genital disease that affects insulin levels. If I had it at hand, I do, it's right in front of my computer. There's actually a genetic group of people. It's very important. It's published in JAMA 2 years ago about a genetic family. And I don't mean just a family, but a genetic trend of people who normally run higher sugars. Let's just say normal sugar is 80 or 90. Certainly it's less than 100. Well, these people normally run sugars in the 140, 160 range. And what they did in this study is they examined these people to see whether or not they had an increased risk of heart disease, stroke, other things, kidney disease, other things commonly found in diabetics, and they did not. And so one of the conclusions from this is the blood sugar itself really isn't the damaging part of the disease. Now, some people say it is, and there's reason to believe it is partially. But in this particular study published in JAMA a couple of years ago, it showed that really it's not the blood sugar. The problem is the body is metabolically deranged by suffering from overnutrition and obesity and insulin resistance. So all kinds of things happen that cause you to have more heart disease and more strokes. It's not just the sugar level. It's not even really close to the sugar level. Sugar level is just something that we can treat. And why do we treat it? Because we can. We have drugs that make the sugar better. Blood sugar level. Why don't we treat the underlying problem, which is the food? Don't know anything about that.
Mm-hmm.
How could food be important?
How could it be?
Yeah, really. So anyway, I kind of forgot the question, but you might follow this up later. The blood sugar levels are not very important in terms of, well, you don't want to get hypoglycemia, in terms of preventing disease such as heart disease, eye trouble, diabetes. In fact, I've told you one story about people I've taken care of who've eaten a very good diet for 40 years with no complications. There's one research paper I can think of that was done from Africa. And this, again, is about the 1980s. And they found 600, let me say that again, 600 people with diabetes in Africa. Okay. In this country, 14% are diabetic. But anyways, they found 600 people. And these were type 1 diabetics. Why their pancreas destroyed, maybe a virus, I don't know. But when they studied these people over a long term, they found no heart disease, no eye disease, no kidney disease in these people with type 1.5 or close to type 1 diabetes. So, and I can show you a study from China, the same thing. I think back, I've read so many things. I can get you a study for China back in the 1920s when they described the doctors. One particular doctor did this, studied the diabetics that they found in China. They had no complications, none. Why they lived on rice was 90% of the diet. So I think that's clear enough. Your goal should not be an ideal blood sugar, even though that's what you're told, because that's the only thing your doctor knows. And billions of dollars are made on drug pills, which are very dangerous. And insulin ain't cheap either, and it's going up in price, just like the EpiPen. Hey, they found out that they can charge more for insulin too. So it's getting really expensive. And I'm going to stop with that question now.
Yeah, better. Okay. Dr. McDougall, this is an interesting question. Do autoimmune diseases and diabetes type 2 frequently occur together?
No. I mean, they can because people eat the same diet. But the frequency of occurrences with autoimmune diseases like Hashimoto's thyroiditis or rheumatoid arthritis and type 1 diabetes. Okay, because they're all autoimmune diseases. There's also another common denominator which must be considered, which is celiac disease. People who have problems with wheat, barley, and rye, they knock down their brush border, it becomes incompetent, and so milk proteins, for example, more easily leak into the bloodstream on other animal proteins, and they go through molecular mimicry, and they're more likely to give you rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, etc. when you have celiac disease. But type 2 diabetes is just due to being too fat. It's from overnutrition, and yes, the same kind of diet, will give you autoimmune diseases, but there's no direct correlation as there is with type 1. So when people have multiple autoimmune diseases, like they say they have thyroiditis, lost the thyroid, or they have some kind of arthritis, or they have a colitis, or type 1 diabetes, which we're talking about, every doctor and every patient should look to a common denominator of celiac disease if you have multiple autoimmune diseases. And then you follow our diet, just don't eat wheat, barley, and rye. That's all. It ain't no big deal. September 2005 newsletter if you want to read about it. My newsletter.
Right. Dr. McDougall, in the last Advanced Study Weekend, Dr. Ornish was there, correct?
Yeah. He's my long time good professional friend.
Yeah, I remember his lecture was amazing. Now, I really don't recall him talking about using any kind of dairy product. Are you aware of that? Someone here in the chat has mentioned that they've heard that Dr. Ornish says it's perfectly fine to use.
I'm only going to use my memory, and I will stay open to be criticized, because Dean's relationship with mine is going on for 35 years. In fact, we used to sell books together on same tours, same shows, same bookstore signings. We'd be like a week apart on his first book and mine, which was probably in 1984. And I see him all the time and talk to him all the time. So I would say he's one of my closer professional friends. Now, the question is, what does he recommend? Well, very close to what I recommend, and that's what you should focus on. The differences that people might want to pick on between myself and Ornish and, say, Campbell or Greger or Esselstyn or so on. I mean, these things are important to me and maybe a little important to you, but you're missing the big picture if that's what you focus on. So as I recall, Dr. Ornish recommends fish and fish oil. I believe this is not correct thinking. One, we're almost out of fish, 90% are gone. And the other is fish oil has not been shown to either primarily or secondarily prevent heart disease or strokes. It is oil. The fat you eat's the fat you wear. It causes bleeding problems. Eskimos are known for fatal nosebleeds. Just don't do it. Now, as far as use of full-fat dairy, I can't remember Dean doing that, but
no, it's saying that he uses non-fat dairy, yogurt and cheese and egg whites.
Well, you know what? I think that's gone on in different phases at different times. Dean Ornish is, unfortunately, or fortunately, or, I'm just too stubborn. I don't change at all, period. I've been teaching the same thing for 40 years. But Dean has gone through some changes in thinking over the last 35 years that have been minor. So what he recommends at the present time, I don't know. He has a very serious involvement with a company, I believe it's called Healthways. And what influence they have been, I don't know. What changes Dean has made. He's, Dean's a very important guy, very good thinker. He has reasons for doing what he does, but I have reasons for doing other. I would not add low-fat dairy. I just told you the dairy protein causes type 1 diabetes and all kinds of autoimmune diseases. And my newsletter from last month is with a 2% fat chocolate milk. You can read about constipation and destroying the kidneys from the New England Journal of Medicine. And why would I feed people dairy protein? Makes no sense at all. It's not the food for people. You can't. I bet you couldn't even raise a calf on low-fat dairy. I bet if you tried to raise a baby cow on low-fat dairy, that cow would die. And then you go to jail because the animal rights people would come after you and put you in jail. But anyway, don't feed it to your kids.
Yeah, no. Do you think it makes any, would it help someone that is using insulin to avoid caffeine, or is that a minor?
No, I don't think avoiding caffeine if you're using insulin makes any difference. Coffee and alcohol and heroin and cocaine are completely different issues. We're talking about food poisoning and the proper medical care by a medical doctor. Remember, I'm a board-certified internist. If you are a drunk, you know what you got to do. If you're a caffeine addict and you're enjoying it, well, maybe you'll keep doing it. When people come to our program in Santa Rosa, that's the first lecture we tell them. We say, we are not a drug rehab program. It's food. We're trying to fix you the food and your medical care. So don't plan on coming here and stopping your half a bottle of booze a day or your 2-3 cups of coffee a day, because we're not going to ask you to do that. We will, however, ask you to not get the mocha chocolate milk 600 calorie dairy coffee things. We'll tell you to drink it black or a little soy milk. So anyway, they're completely different issues. But if you're ordering from Starbucks, the one that has 600 calories of some dairy food in it, then we're back to the food.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. So can you just talk for a few minutes about diabetes insipidus?
You know, I could, but I won't because I can't because I don't remember. It's been a long time. It has something to do with the damage of the control of the pituitary, I believe.
Okay.
You're just stretching me too much, and I'm afraid that because I did know a lot about it when I was a student. I've never seen a case of it, except for when I was a student. Maybe when I was a student, I saw a case of it in the hospital. It's just so extremely rare, and my memory is only so good.
Right.
It's a completely different disease. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about, except for your sugar is up, I believe, and you urinate a lot.
Right.
But you can look it up on the internet. Just, Wikipedia will give you a better answer than I could give you anytime.
Oh, right. Dr. McDougall, there's someone here who's asking, when I introduce the plant-based diet to type 2 diabetics, they immediately throw up a brick wall due to the idea of eating more carbs than their doctors allowed. What would be the best first approach to addressing their fears?
They ought to understand, in fact, you should look them in the eyes. Mm-hmm. And you should say teachings on what to eat by the Diabetic Association or by your dietitian or by your doctor are a guarantee that you will always remain diabetic. You are guaranteed by what they teach you from the American Diabetic Association, from your dietitian and your doctor, you are guaranteed to remain a type 2 diabetic. So you might just hit them in the face with that one. And then next time they ask and they say, I'm tired of taking shots and pills that make me sick and all this stuff, and I'd like to be healthy. And boy, you look so healthy. You're so thin and trim and active, and you're 70 years old and you're out playing with the grandkids and you're having a good, how'd you do that? How'd you do that? And you say, well, you might start with this article, September 2009, Dr. McDougall wrote. That's a good place to start. You just have to open people's eyes. There are people, everybody says, and I said this too 45 years ago, I'm not going to eat that way. That's crazy. I remember my great-grandfather, old Pop. He was dying of kidney disease in his late 80s because he lived on meatballs and eggs. And he had terrible atherosclerosis in the legs so bad he couldn't walk 15 feet. It was called claudication. He had a pot belly and he smoked a pipe. And my dad wanted to save his dad's life. And so when he developed kidney failure, my dad asked me, well, will this help my dad? I said, yeah, it'll help him a lot. And of course, I was a young man then. I gave him the best information I could. And my dad went to his dad, and my old Pop looked at his son and said, I am not going to eat like some GD rabbit. That was it.
That was it.
That's it. You can do whatever you want, but you ought to have a choice. And old Pop died at 87 of kidney failure. Wow. But yes, at that stage, we could have maybe given him a couple more years. If you don't want to change, fine. You can stay drunk. You can just don't drive on my street. You can be drunk. You can sit in your bathroom, stay drunk all day long. I don't care, but don't go out on my street. You can smoke cigarettes, but when I get down, went from a tobacco smoker, because I used to be one, I get so nauseated and upset that I get angry, and I know what you're talking about. But just don't smoke in my air. And you know what? You could eat whatever diet you want, except for one thing, and that is destroying our planet. So you can't do that and let me sit here and say it's okay. It's not okay.
It's okay. It's not.
It's not okay. If you want to kill yourself, fine, but not on my grandchildren's dime. That's what I say.
Yes. Well, very good. Very clear. Dr. McDougall, someone was asking, of course, I've seen it when I go to the event, if it's okay to drink plant milk, and that's obviously that's not what you were talking about earlier about dairy.
I don't think you should be drinking glassfuls of almond milk or soy milk, but it's a nice whitener for your cereal if you want, or if you drink a beverage that you enjoy better with some kind of creamy or white flavor. Yeah, we use it for that. Yeah, but we don't encourage people. And then after all, it's it's a lot of fat usually, and sometimes they add sugar and sometimes they add oil. You got to look at the ingredients, and it's not a beverage. Your beverage is water. You see this? Not vodka. It's water.
It's water.
That's your beverage, and that's what, if you want to be in good health, that's fine. Well, you say, oh, occasionally I like to have a Coke. Well, that's fine too. Coke's kind of fun. And occasionally I like to have a cup of coffee, or maybe every day. Oh, that's fine. And occasionally I like to have a drink. That's fine. But they call people who drink every day. Yeah. So people who eat the American diet every day, we call them diabetics, heart patients, breast cancer victims, colon cancer victims. There are lots of names for people who eat the American diet every day.
Right. Right. Well, I know I would just want to reiterate this to everybody here, that a lot of the questions that people are writing or that they have sent, they truly are answered in the chapter in your book and in the newsletter. So I want to encourage everybody to really read those. They've been sent to you, and if not, they're already posted on Dr. McDougall's website. And Dr. McDougall, would you just briefly comment on, you've talked a few times about the Kempner rice diet and sugar in relation to diabetes, and someone is asking, they said that they've heard Dr. Esselstyn talk about sugar damaging the endothelium layer. Okay. Could you comment on that?
Yes, I will comment on that. First, I want to say, I bet if you watch this webinar again, you'd learn something new, because there's a lot of information I gave you. And the other thing is, on my website is a 1 hour long video I did at one of the advanced study weekends, which is about diabetes, 100 years, a lost opportunity. It's free. Yes. And you just go to the website, education videos, expert videos. So you want to watch an hour long video about and showing all the research papers that I've given on 2 occasions. It's there for you to watch. So you can do that. You can read the book that we talked about. You read the newsletters. There's probably another 15 newsletters I've written about type 1 diabetes, all kinds of things that are there for you to read. So it's all there for you to read.